The dying millionaire fell in love with his caregiver, then gave her everything before letting go. She only took the job because her family needed the money. He'd already decided he had nothing left to live for, but somewhere between the silence, the sarcasm, and the sleepless nights, something happened. He began to see her, and just when she gave him a reason to hold on, he gave her everything he had left. What he left behind wasn't just money. It was meaning, a future, a final goodbye that will stay with her forever. Hello family, welcome to Mr. Hearthline Stories. If you believe in love that changes you, even if it doesn't last forever, drop "I'm with you, Mr. Hearthline" in the comments and tell us where in the world you're watching from. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to feel something real today. The needle bobbed through the fabric, and the sewing machine gave off a tired groan. Ariel. Jordan leaned closer, guiding the stitches like they were threads of breath. Each tug, each push, each fold of cloth wasn't just a task. It was a small, defiant declaration that she hadn't stopped dreaming. The kitchen she worked in was small, walls stained with time and corners cluttered with hand-me-downs. The scent of cornbread hung warm in the air, fresh from the oven her mama still swore by. On the old couch in the adjoining room, her 11-year-old brother, Caleb, giggled through a cartoon rerun, his laugh full of the joy she tried so hard to protect. Ariel tugged the fabric gently, smoothing the uneven hem of a skirt she had pieced together from remnants donated by the church. She had no client, no sale pending, just sketches in her notebook and the need to believe she was more than just another girl from Atlanta's forgotten side. "You work too hard on stuff that don't feed nobody," Damon muttered behind her. She hadn't noticed him come in. Damon had a way of blending into corners, slinking in, without offering energy, just judgment. He leaned against the fridge now, scrolling through his phone, shirtless and barefoot like he paid rent, which he didn't. "I like it," she said, still looking at the cloth. "That's enough for now," he scoffed. "Yeah, but liking it don't pay the bills, baby. Ain't nobody buying designer dreams around here." Ariel's hands paused. The machine clicked into silence. She turned toward him. "I'm not asking for New York. I just want a shot at something I'm good at." Damon shrugged. "People good at things don't sit broke in houses like this. You should focus on real jobs like that lady down the street. She cuts hair out her porch. Makes more than you sewing up nobody's clothes." Ariel looked at him and almost asked, "What about you?" But she didn't. He'd either find a way to flip the blame or vanish for days until guilt brought him back. Damon wasn't cruel, not in the way movies made men cruel. He was just soft-spoken and static, pulling her into a stillness she hadn't chosen, but she had stayed. Out of loyalty, fear of starting over, habit. She turned the sewing machine back on, not to silence him, but to remind herself of who she was. The needle moved again, louder than his complaints, steadier than his presence. Across the table, her mama came in quietly, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her eyes scanned the skirt in progress, then shifted to the window. A beat passed before she spoke. "You been praying for a break, right?" Ariel slowed the stitch. Every night, her mama laid a folded piece of newspaper on the table. "Then maybe this is it." Ariel leaned forward. The job listing was boxed in faded ink. Live-in caregiver needed. Young female preferred. No experience required. Private estate. Double pay. Apply through Everwell Agency. She blinked. Private estate? Her mama nodded. Buckhead. Ariel leaned back, wary. "That's way out of our league." "It don't matter. They want someone willing, not perfect. That could be you." "I don't know nothing about being a caregiver." "You know how to care. You've been doing that your whole life." Ariel glanced toward the living room, where Caleb had now stretched across the couch, half asleep. Then she looked at her mama. Tired eyes, quiet strength, hands that had held the whole family together with grace and leftover grease from long shifts at the diner. How much is double pay? She asked. Enough to help with this house. Enough to breathe a little. Ariel ran her thumb over the edges of the paper. The idea felt far away, like something not meant for girls who stitched from scraps and got loved halfway. But she was tired of surviving. Just to survive. All right? She whispered. That night, when Damon slid into bed beside her and asked what she was thinking about, she lied and said nothing. The Uber driver didn't speak much. Ariel was grateful. She didn't want conversation. She wanted to breathe. As they pulled into Buckhead, the city changed. Sidewalks widened. Houses vanished behind. Iron gates. Lawns looked ironed. Even the trees stood straighter, as if the air here demanded it. The car slowed before a tall stone wall and gleaming black gate. In its center, in curled silver letters, were the words Ward Estate. Ariel swallowed hard. You sure this is the place? The driver asked, glancing at her reflection in the mirror. She forced a nod. Yeah. He raised an eyebrow but didn't ask more. The gates slid open silently. No buzz, no clank. Just smooth, silent power. As the car wound through a driveway lined with trimmed hedges and a fountain she could barely hear, Ariel gripped her tote bag tighter. The blouse she wore was ironed but thrifted, the shoes polished but cheap. Everything about her whispered borrowed, held together, unlike the place she was about to walk into. The mansion came into view slowly. Not just big, deliberate. Pale stone, wide pillars, windows. So clean they looked invisible. The car stopped. She climbed out, nerves making her hands tremble as she adjusted her skirt. A woman was already walking down the steps. Tall, graceful. Her hair swept back into a perfect chignon, streaked with silver. Every step she took was quiet but precise. Miss Jordan? The woman asked. Yes, ma'am, Ariel replied, trying to keep her voice steady. The woman gave a nod that wasn't cold, just controlled. I'm Margaret Ward. Thank you for coming. Come in. Inside, the scent hit her first lemon polish and fresh flowers. Not the harsh clean of bleach, but the kind of luxury you can't fake. Ariel stepped onto a hallway lined with art. Framed. Paintings she couldn't name but knew were worth more than her entire apartment building. Margaret led the way. Her heels barely made a sound on the floor. She moved like someone used to being obeyed, not with harshness, but with quiet expectation. My son is 26, Margaret said without turning. He's brilliant, but very ill. Ariel nodded. I read the agency's notes. He has hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. We lost his father to it 3 years ago. Her voice didn't crack, but it dipped low. He's been, Margaret paused, choosing her words, difficult. He pushes people away. Sarcasm is his armor. Most caregivers last a few days. Ariel said nothing. Margaret stopped in front of a heavy oak door. She turned to Ariel, softer now. He's angry, Miss Jordan, and scared, though he won't say it. If he's cruel, know that it isn't personal. But if you're patient, if you can reach him. She stopped. Hope glimmered in her eyes, almost embarrassed to be seen. I understand, Ariel whispered. Margaret smiled faintly. I hope you do. She knocked gently, then opened the door without waiting. Margaret's gentle knock on the oak panel went unanswered. She pushed the door open, anyway, tilting her head toward Ariel in a quiet invitation. Mr. Ward, your new caregiver has arrived, she said evenly. The room was different from the rest of the mansion. No polished art, no gleaming surfaces. It looked lived in. Bookshelves lined every wall, crammed with journals, medical texts, and biographies. A heavy desk stood near a large window that spilled late afternoon light across. Papers and untouched coffee cups. In the center sat Kellen Ward. He was striking even in a slump, dark hair falling over his forehead, jaw clenched, one hand tapping the armrest of his chair in a restless rhythm. A tablet rested in his other hand, but his eyes didn't lift when they entered. Margaret's voice softened. Kellen. He finally looked up. His gaze swept from Margaret to Ariel, then down to her shoes, then back to her eyes, not cruel, just assessing like a man checking a chessboard. So you're the latest, he said. His voice was smooth but dry, a quiet blade. Ariel straightened. I'm Ariel Jordan. I'll be helping you out. He smirked faintly. Helping me out, right? They all say that. Margaret stepped forward. She came from the agency. I know where she came from, he interrupted, still watching Ariel. How long do you think you'll last? A week? 2? Ariel's throat tightened, but she refused to look away. I'll last as long as I need to. One of his eyebrows lifted a fraction. Stubborn. That's new. Margaret glanced at Ariel, almost smiling. I'll leave you two to get acquainted. She closed the door gently behind her. Silence filled the room. Kellen set his tablet down and leaned back, crossing his arms. Double pay, right? That's the only reason you're here. Don't bother pretending it's anything else. Ariel placed her tote bag carefully on the floor. My family does need the money. That's true. But I don't quit easy, Mr. Ward. He tilted his head, studying her like she was an equation. You all say that at first. Then you leave. The jokes get too sharp. The hours get too heavy. And you decide I'm not worth it. She clasped her hands in front of her, grounding herself. I didn't come here to decide if you're worth it. I came here to work. Something flickered across his face. A hint of amusement, maybe even respect. But it vanished quickly. We'll see. He picked up his tablet again, eyes dropping back to the screen. The kitchen's 2 doors down. I take my medication at 8. Don't be late. Ariel exhaled slowly. All right. He glanced at her once more, and this time his tone shifted just slightly. Less steel, more fatigue. And don't hover. I hate hovering. I don't hover, she said quietly. But I don't run either. A corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but not a sneer either. He looked back at the tablet, effectively dismissing her. Ariel turned toward the door, her pulse steadying. She had seen enough to know he wasn't just angry. He was hurting, and she had already decided she wasn't leaving because someone told her she should. As she stepped into the hallway, Margaret was waiting, eyes questioning. Well? Ariel straightened her shoulders. I'll be here tomorrow. Margaret's lips curved just a little. Good. Ariel woke up an hour before dawn, just to make sure the hem of her blouse was pressed and her shoes were cleaned of the red dust from her block. She checked twice that her notepad, water bottle, and portable charger were in her tote. It wasn't about impressing Kellen. It was about dignity. When life gave you few choices, how you showed up to the ones you had left mattered. By 7:15 a.m., she was back at the mansion. The door opened before she could knock. Margaret again. Punctual, she murmured approvingly. That'll help. Inside, the same cool, lemon-scented air greeted her. Ariel made her way to Kellen's study, hesitating only briefly before opening the door. He was already awake, dressed in a gray long-sleeve shirt and dark joggers, seated in a recliner by the window, thumbing through a hardcover medical journal. He didn't look up. You're early, he said flatly. I like to be. Kellen closed the book and finally looked at her. So do burglars. Ariel smiled faintly. I'm not here to steal anything. He raised a brow. Not even sympathy? I figured you didn't have any to spare. That earned a dry exhale. Maybe a laugh. Maybe just breath. Touché. She moved toward the small counter where his medications were laid out. She double-checked labels before pouring a glass of water and placing it on the side table beside him. Your morning meds. He eyed the pills. Do I have to? I don't force people. He held her gaze a moment longer, then took the water and swallowed the pills with practiced ease. You'd be surprised how many caregivers try to play doctor. I'm not trying to be anything but what I was hired to be. He looked her up and down again, like he was still figuring her out. Where are you from? South Side. He tilted his head. Tough place to come out of with hope intact. I came out with bills too. Hope tags along where it can. A long pause. He didn't speak, didn't smile, just turned back to the window. You're not what I expected. I get that a lot, she said quietly. Later that afternoon, she brought in a tray with soup and sliced fruit. I can manage that myself, he muttered. I know, she replied, placing the tray down and stepping back. He picked up the spoon slowly. You're not going to hover? You said you hate that. I listen. He watched her for a long moment, then returned to the soup. Ariel sat quietly near the bookshelf, pulling out a paperback and pretending to read. But she was watching him, not out of pity, but out of something quieter. Concern, curiosity, maybe. Compassion. The hours passed without incident. When Margaret entered late in the evening, she was surprised to find Ariel still seated, Kellen half asleep in his chair. He stayed calm, she whispered. I didn't give him a reason not to, Ariel replied. Margaret smiled, weary but hopeful. You can go home now. Same time tomorrow. Yes, ma'am. The bus ride home felt longer than it was. Every light stretched. Every stop dragged. When she finally stepped off 2 blocks from her house, the sky was already slipping into indigo. Damon sat on the porch, hoodie up, phone glowing in his hands. Took your time, he said without looking up. It's a long ride from Buckhead. He finally looked up, eyebrows furrowed. You still doing that job? I said I would. He leaned back. So you're playing maid to some dying guy now? I'm not playing anything, she replied, unlocking the door. Damon followed her in. You're barely here. Caleb misses you. Mama too. I'm doing this for them, she said, dropping her tote by the couch. You sure about that? Or are you doing it for you? She froze, turning to face him. What's that supposed to mean? He shrugged. You get to wear clean clothes, walk through marble halls, talk to someone who treats you like you're somebody. Ariel's jaw tensed. He doesn't treat me like I'm somebody. He treats me like I'm disposable. Just like you do when I don't do what you want. Damon blinked, surprised. That's not fair. It's not? Then tell me one time you supported anything I've wanted without questioning my worth. Silence. He looked away. I'm tired, Damon, she said. I need rest. Not another lecture. He didn't respond, just grabbed his hoodie and let himself out, muttering something under his breath. Ariel sat at the edge of her bed later that night, toes curling against the cold floor. She was exhausted, but not broken. The weight she was carrying didn't feel any lighter, but for the first time in a long while, she knew exactly why she was carrying it. The day began like any other since Ariel had started at the mansion, with a silent drive into Buckhead and the soft hiss of the iron gates opening to swallow her into a world she still didn't feel she belonged in. Margaret greeted her briefly, distracted by a phone call. He's in the study, she mouthed, then disappeared down another hall. When Ariel pushed open the door, Kellen was at his desk, hunched over a folder. He didn't look up. You're late, he said automatically. It's 7:58, she replied, setting his tea down on the coaster by his elbow. He glanced at the clock, then back at her. Fine, early, whatever. He gestured at the pills, already lined up. You know the drill. She handed him the water without a word. He swallowed the pills, eyes never leaving the paper. In front of him, the silence between them felt heavy but not hostile, more like a truce. I'll be in the sitting room if you need anything, she said quietly. He grunted an acknowledgement. She retreated to the adjoining room, straightening cushions and folding a blanket. She liked having something to do with her hands. It kept her from overthinking the look on his face each morning, that flicker of fatigue he tried to bury under sarcasm. On the desk, beside the folders and scattered papers, lay a leather-bound book. She'd seen it before, always tucked under other things, always within his reach. Today it was half open, a page marked with a pen. Ariel hesitated at the doorway, her fingers tightening on the blanket. She didn't mean to pry. She just wanted to understand him. Wanted to know what sat behind those guarded eyes. She took one step closer. Another. Her gaze slid over the neat handwriting. Not full sentences. Fragments. Notes on symptoms. Lists of medications. Occasional lines of something more personal. Then one line stopped her cold. 6 months. Enough. I won't drag this out. Not like Dad. Her heart lurched. She read it again to make sure she hadn't imagined it. Her throat went dry. Kellen was planning to end it. She shut the book quickly, sliding it back under the folder exactly where it had been. Her pulse hammered in her ears. She turned toward the door, but it was too late. He was standing there. He must have moved without sound. Years of living in this room had taught him how. His eyes went straight to the journal under her hand, then to her face. You read it. His voice was low, dangerous. Kellen, His chair screeched back as he moved around the desk. You had no right. The volume rose. None. I didn't mean to, she began, but he cut her off. You people come in here, act like you care, snoop around like you own my pain, and then you leave. Every time. I'm not. You are. He slammed a hand against the desk, making the pen roll off. You think you're different because you smile while you invade my life. Her eyes stung. I don't want you to give up. He barked a bitter laugh. Give up? You think this is about giving up? This is about ending pain. Before it swallows me whole. She stepped forward despite herself. You're not alone. Doesn't that count for something? For a heartbeat he froze, as if the words hit a nerve. His eyes softened, then hardened again. Get out, he said, voice tight. Kellen, get out. Each word landed heavy. Ariel's hands shook. She wanted to stay, to argue, to tell him she understood. But his face was pale, his jaw trembling with fury, and she knew pressing further would only make him shut down. More. She picked up her tote and moved toward the door. Her voice came out soft but steady. I'm coming back tomorrow. He didn't answer. Outside in the hallway, Ariel leaned against the cool wall, eyes closing as she tried to steady her breath. She hadn't meant to cross that line, but now she couldn't unsee what she'd read. He wasn't just sick. He was planning his exit. Margaret appeared at the far end of the hall, eyebrows raised. Everything all right? Ariel forced a small nod. He's tired today. Margaret's eyes searched her face. She didn't press. Ariel walked out of the mansion feeling like she'd left a piece of herself behind. That night at home, Damon barely looked up when she came in. You're quiet, he muttered. I'm tired, she said. He smirked. Too tired to notice how weird this is getting? You spend more time with a dying man than with your own people. Ariel dropped her bag by the couch. He's not just some dying man. Oh? What is he then? She met Damon's gaze for the first time that night. Someone who needs help, and someone who's given me a reason to show up. He scoffed, but she didn't wait for him to answer. She went straight to her room, closed the door, and pressed her palms to her face. She had a choice to make. She could leave like all the others, or she could stay and try to pull him back from the edge. Her heart already knew which choice she'd made. The next morning, Ariel's hands trembled as she slipped her key into the tote. The bus ride to Buckhead felt longer than usual, not because of distance, but because of the question she kept circling in her mind. Would he even let her in? She had barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the look on Kellen's face when he caught her with the journal, not just anger, but betrayal. A quiet kind of panic buried beneath his fury. When she stepped onto the stone porch of the Ward mansion, her knees almost buckled. But she stood still and pressed the bell. A few moments passed. The door creaked open. It was Margaret. Her expression faltered for just a second. Miss Jordan, I wasn't sure we'd see you again. Ariel nodded once. I'm not leaving him. Not unless he tells me to my face. Margaret studied her, then stepped aside. Inside, the air was heavier today. No music, no footsteps echoing across marble floors. Even the house seemed to hold its breath. Ariel walked to the study and paused at the door. She knocked once, then opened it slowly. Kellen was seated in the recliner again. He didn't look up. "You're still here," he muttered. "I said I would be." He shifted, adjusting the blanket draped across his lap. "You don't listen well." "I listen just fine. I just don't scare easy." Silence stretched between them. Then he gestured weakly at the table. "Tea." She moved without hesitation, preparing the tray like she had every morning since she started. Her hands were steadier now. She knew her place in this routine, even if he pretended not to. "Need it." She placed the cup beside him. "Still no sugar?" He gave a single nod, still not meeting her eyes. Ariel stepped back and folded her hands behind her. She wasn't sure what to say, whether to apologize or act like nothing happened. Kellen spoke first. "You shouldn't have read it." Her breath caught. "I know. But you did. I wasn't looking to hurt you." He sighed, the sound ragged and tired. "People always say that when they cross lines. I didn't cross it to invade. I crossed it because—" She hesitated. "Because I saw something I wasn't meant to, but once I did, I couldn't pretend I didn't." Finally, he looked at her. His eyes were darker today, less defiant, more worn. "Everyone wants to save me," he said, "even when I'm telling them not to." "I don't want to save you," she said quietly. "I want you to choose not to give up." His jaw tightened. "That's the same thing." "No, it's not." She took a step forward. "I'm not here to change your mind. I'm here to remind you. It's still yours." The silence after that was long, the kind that didn't demand to be filled. Eventually, Kellen looked away again, staring out the window. "You could have just walked away," he said. "Most people do." Ariel sat down in the chair across from him. "I thought about it," she admitted. "I even packed my things last night. But then I remembered something you said about being tired of people pretending." His brow furrowed slightly. "So I decided to stop pretending, too," she finished. "I need this job. My family needs this money. But I'm also staying because I see you, Kellen. Not the diagnosis. Not the attitude. You." For the first time, the silence didn't feel sharp. Felt still. Kellen lifted the teacup slowly, taking a sip. Then he looked at her over the rim. "You really don't scare easy," he murmured. "No," she replied softly. "I don't." He placed the cup back down and leaned into the recliner with a long breath. His posture slackened. The tension in his shoulders eased just slightly. "I hate flowers," he said out of nowhere. She blinked. "Okay. But I don't mind the music you play when you fold my laundry. That old R&B stuff." She smiled, just barely. "Duly noted." He didn't look at her again, but she saw it, the tiniest twitch of his lips. Not a smirk. Not sarcasm. A beginning. By the time she left that evening, Margaret caught her in the hall, surprise plain in her eyes. "He let you stay?" Ariel nodded. "Didn't ask me to leave." Margaret touched her arm gently. "That's more than most ever get." Ariel looked back once before stepping outside, toward the room where a man too young to die was finally starting to live again, even if only for a few moments at a time. Ariel arrived with a tote heavier than usual, not because of more items but because of intention. Folded inside were a hand-packed lunch, a fresh bouquet from a roadside vendor, and her old speaker, fully charged. She didn't expect a celebration. Kellen wasn't that kind of man. But something in her heart told her today was the day to shift the air in his room, if only by an inch. Inside the mansion, Margaret's head poked out from the kitchen. "He's awake," she said. "Bit more alert this morning." Ariel nodded. "Thanks." When she entered the study, the curtains were still closed, the books still untouched from yesterday. Kellen was in his chair again, blanket bunched around his legs, tablet dim in his hand. He glanced up briefly. "You're back. As always," she said, setting her things down. He watched her as she walked to the windows and tugged the curtains open. Sunlight spilled across the floor. Kellen flinched. "That's a bit aggressive." She smiled. "It's morning. The sun doesn't ask permission." He squinted but didn't complain further. She set the speaker on a low shelf and pulled out her phone. A soft beat hummed into the room. An old R&B classic with a soothing rhythm and vocals that melted through the air like warm syrup. Kellen's head tilted. "Is that Luther?" Ariel glanced at him, impressed. "I didn't think you'd know." He smirked faintly. "I'm sick, not uncultured." She laid the bouquet down on the side table next to his books. Daisies, hydrangeas, and tiny white baby's breath tucked between. "Flowers too?" he said with a raised brow. "Don't worry. I know you hate them." He looked at the arrangement again. "I didn't say hate. Just unnecessary." "Beauty's never unnecessary," she replied. He didn't argue. At lunchtime, instead of asking the estate chef to prepare his bland liquid meals, Ariel opened a small lunchbox from her tote. "What is that?" he asked suspiciously. "Turkey and cheese on wheat, with mustard. And I made it." Kellen gave her a look. "You made me a sandwich?" "I made you lunch." He hesitated. "Come on," she said. "It won't kill you." "Famous last words," he muttered, but reached for it anyway. She handed him half, keeping the other for herself. They sat, not opposite but side by side in the lounge chairs by the open window. He took a bite, chewed slowly, then another. "No comment," she teased. He wiped his mouth with a napkin. "It's edible." "Rude." He looked at her sideways. "Okay. It's good." Ariel grinned. "Thank you. You sound surprised." "I'm always surprised when you act human." His eyes narrowed, but then he chuckled. A real one this time. The sound filled the room gently, wrapping around her like the music. "Touché again, Miss Jordan." They ate quietly after that. Occasionally, Kellen looked over at her, as if trying to figure something out, as if her presence unsettled him in a way he couldn't name. Not in a bad way, just unexpected. When they finished, she pulled out her sketch pad, flipping it open on her lap. She didn't draw, yet, just let the pencil rest between her fingers. "You draw?" he asked, watching her hands. "I design," she replied. "Or I try to." He pointed at the pad. "Show me." She hesitated. "You made me eat a sandwich," he said. "Seems only fair." With a tiny nod, she handed it over. He flipped through the pages slowly. Clean lines, bold shapes. Nothing extravagant, but each one pulsed with life. "These are good," he said, sounding almost surprised. "Really good." She looked away. "Doesn't matter. No one's buying dresses off someone with a Southside zip code and no connections." He kept flipping. "You know who else had no connections? My father." She blinked. "He was rich. He wasn't always. He started out poor, got into medical patents, took one risk too many. The rest was luck, timing, and stubbornness." He closed the sketchbook. "Stubbornness is a good start." Ariel smiled quietly, unsure how to respond. That afternoon, she cleaned up the room without being asked. She folded his sweaters neatly, moved used cups back to the tray, changed the flower water. Kellen watched her from the recliner, saying nothing. When she finally stood to leave, he cleared his throat. "Ariel." She turned. It was the first time he'd said her name without a smirk. "Thanks for today." She nodded. "Get some rest." Ariel came home later than usual that night, the faint smell of Kellen's cologne still clinging to her blouse. Her tote felt lighter, though she knew it wasn't. What had changed wasn't the weight, but the air inside her chest, the small, flickering sense of possibility she'd started carrying out. Of the Ward estate each evening. The porch light was off. Damon sat on the steps, hoodie up, phone in hand. His knee bounced. in restless rhythm. You're glowing, he said without looking up. She paused mid-step. Hi to you too. He lifted his eyes. They were darker than usual. Don't hi me. I've been sitting here an hour. I had to stay late, she said evenly. He wasn't feeling well. That what we're calling it now? His tone had sharpened into a knife edge. Staying late. She dropped her keys into her bag. I'm working, Damon. That's it. He rose from the step, pulling the hoodie down. You think I'm stupid? You leave here looking tired, you come back looking like that. His hand swept over her, as if her glow were something he could wipe off. All because of him? Her jaw clenched. Because I'm doing my job. He snorted. No, you're catching feelings. I can tell. She crossed her arms. And if I am? That caught him off guard. His mouth opened, but no words came. He recovered quickly, voice rising. You think he's gonna save you? He's dying, Ariel. He can't give you nothing. Not a future. Not security. Not even a stop. Her voice cut through his like a blade. Don't finish that sentence. He stepped closer. I'm just telling you the truth. You're wasting your time. You're slipping away from everything real. She stared at him, her heart pounding but her hands steady. Everything real? You mean this? She gestured at the porch, the peeling paint, his accusing eyes. You mean waiting for someone who never shows up for me? His face hardened. I show up. I'm here, ain't I? Physically. Her voice dropped. Never any other way. He flinched. I don't need Kellen to give me anything, she continued quietly. But he sees me. That's more than you've ever done. The silence that followed was thick enough to taste. Damon's jaw worked. So you're done with me? I'm done being small, she said. I'm done apologizing for wanting more than surviving. He looked like he wanted to argue, to throw something, to pull her back with words. But the fight drained out of his shoulders. He turned, grabbed his hoodie, and stomped down the steps. Without looking back, the door closed softly behind her. Inside, the house felt strangely still. Caleb was asleep in his room. Her mama's door was closed. Ariel leaned against the wall, inhaling slowly. She wasn't free yet, but something inside her had shifted. She went to her room, set her tote on the chair, and opened her sketchbook. She flipped to a blank page and wrote 2 words across the top. Begin again. Then she started to draw, not dresses this time, but a horizon line stretching far beyond a train window. She didn't know why, but she could almost hear Kellen's voice telling her she could. At the Ward estate, Kellen sat awake in his chair long past midnight. He hadn't seen Ariel leave, but he had heard her laughter earlier when she'd played her music. For the first time in weeks, the room still held the echo of it. He stared at his journal, the leather cover closed tight. His hand hovered over it but didn't open. Not tonight. Instead, he reached for his tea and took a slow sip, the faintest smile playing at the corner of his mouth. The next morning, Ariel didn't rush. She moved slowly through the motions of getting ready, letting each act feel deliberate. Pressing her blouse, smoothing her braids back, tucking her sketchbook into her tote. She wasn't late. She was steady. Damon had texted her twice overnight. We need to talk. I'm sorry. She had read them but hadn't replied. When she reached the Ward mansion, Margaret met her at the door with a look of polite curiosity. Everything all right at home? Ariel smiled faintly. Getting there. Margaret didn't pry. He's in the lounge this morning. Said he wanted a change of scenery. Ariel's eyebrows rose, but she just nodded and went in. Kellen was seated on the couch instead of the recliner, legs stretched out under a knit blanket. The curtains were open. The flowers she'd brought yesterday were still in the vase. Not thrown away, not moved. He glanced up. You're late. It's 8:01. Late, he said again, but without bite. She placed his tea on the low table. No sugar. Extra lemon. He blinked. You remembered. I remember everything, she said lightly. He watched her unpack the rest of her tote. "You're quiet today. I had a long night." "Damon?" The name left his lips as if it were a guess he'd been holding. She froze for half a second, then nodded. "You left him," Kellen said. Not a question, a statement. Her eyes flicked up. "How do you know?" "You look lighter." He shifted slightly, wincing as he adjusted his posture. "You sound lighter." Ariel sat down across from him, resting her hands on her knees. "I told him I was done." He walked out. "This time I didn't follow." Kellen tilted his head. "Good." She raised an eyebrow. "You don't even know him." "I don't need to," he said quietly. "I know the difference between someone who builds you and someone who breaks you, and you deserve someone who builds." The air between them changed at that moment. It wasn't the words alone, it was the way he said them, without sarcasm, without effort, like he'd been waiting to tell her. Ariel looked down at her hands, a slow, unguarded smile breaking across her face. "Thank you." He didn't answer. He just picked up the tea and took a sip, eyes on her over the rim. They spent the next hour going through his medication schedule and reviewing his physical therapy exercises. He followed her instructions without the usual comments. When she suggested opening the window wider, he nodded instead of complaining. Small shifts but real ones. After lunch, she sat near the fireplace, sketchbook open. He leaned his head back against the couch, watching her pencil move. "What are you drawing?" he asked. She hesitated. "A dress." He snorted softly. "Another one?" "This one's different," she said. "It's for leaving." His brow furrowed. "Leaving? Not running away." "Stepping forward," she explained. "Something bold enough to wear on a train out of here. Something stitched from scraps but meant for a new life." He was silent for a long moment. "You think you'll leave soon?" he asked finally. She looked up at him. "Someday." He nodded slowly, eyes flicking to the window. "Good. You should." Ariel's heart tugged. "What about you?" He gave a faint smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm already somewhere else most days." Her throat tightened, but she said nothing. He shifted again, setting the tea down. "You know," he said softly, "I used to think people like you were just stories my mother told me to keep me hopeful. People who show up, stay, and don't flinch." "I'm real," she whispered. "I can see that now." The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was tender. That evening, as Ariel left the mansion, Margaret caught her at the door. "He's different," she said quietly. "Do you see it?" Ariel nodded. "I do." Margaret squeezed her hand. "Thank you." Ariel walked down the driveway, feeling the crisp air settle around her shoulders. She had let go of something that held her back. And inside those walls, something or someone was slowly letting go of his armor too. It was raining when Ariel arrived at the mansion. The kind of soft, slow rain that painted the sidewalks darker but didn't send people running. She stepped inside, shaking the droplets from her coat and smoothing her edges with practiced grace. Margaret peeked from the hallway with a rare smile. "He's in the library. Won't admit it, but I think he was waiting for you." Ariel's heart gave a quiet knock in her chest. She entered the library with careful steps. Kellen sat by the window, a thick throw wrapped over his lap, legs propped on a cushioned stool. The fire in the corner crackled low. He looked up. When she walked in, eyes steady. "You look like a wet brochure for determination," he said dryly. She grinned. "And you look like a man who's stalling on his meds." He gestured toward the tea tray. "I waited." She poured it for him, no sugar, extra lemon, just how he liked it now. They moved through the usual motions of the morning, pills, check-ins, mild teasing, but there was something slower about the air today. Neither of them rushed. After lunch, as he dozed for a bit, Ariel settled on the rug near the fireplace. She pulled out her sketchbook, flipping past old designs until she found a blank page. The sound of pencil against paper felt calming. She didn't realize Kellen was watching until he spoke. "Show me." Her fingers paused. "I thought you were asleep." "Not with that pencil scratching like it's trying to break free." Ariel bit back a smile and turned the sketchbook so he could see. It was a gown, full length, bold shoulders, asymmetrical hem, structured, clean. The kind of design that didn't apologize. He studied it for a while. "This one's different." "Different how?" "Looks like it has somewhere to be." She blinked. "That's exactly what I was thinking." He looked up at her. "Where would you send it?" "To a runway. In New York." "Would you go with it?" She hesitated. "I don't know." "You should," he said. "It deserves to be seen." "You do." Ariel lowered the sketchbook slightly, something tightening in her chest. "Nobody in my neighborhood makes it that far." "Then maybe someone needs to be the first." She looked at him, really looked. His face pale but striking. His voice soft now, stripped of sarcasm. "I don't even have money for supplies, let alone a trip to." Kellen raised a hand. "That's logistics. I'm talking vision." She sat back, tucking her knees under herself. "You sound like a dreamer today." "Maybe you're contagious," he said, his lips curving. A long silence stretched between them. Not awkward, intimate. He reached for the sketchbook again, flipping pages slowly. "You ever show these to anyone?" "No," she said. "They're just mine." "Well," he said, "not anymore." She felt her throat tighten. He wasn't just flipping pages. He was seeing her, the parts she didn't share. She moved closer to the fireplace, warmth pressing against her side. The rain outside tapped lightly against the tall windows. For the first time in a long time, she felt safe showing someone what she hadn't dared to claim, a dream with her name on it. Later that evening, as she prepared to leave, Kellen cleared his throat. "Hey," he said softly. She turned at the door. "I meant what I said. About New York. You belong in rooms that expect more from you." Her voice caught. "And what about you?" He didn't answer right away. "I belong wherever you let me stay," he finally said. The sky had turned indigo by the time Ariel gathered her things. Rain still whispered outside, gentle now, the kind that made the city glow under streetlights. Kellen hadn't moved from the lounge chair. He watched her from across the room, eyes half-lidded, not tired, just still, as if something had settled inside him for the first time in days. "You're leaving?" he asked, voice softer than usual. "It's late," she said. "I figured you could use the rest." He nodded. "But I won't sleep." She paused, one hand on the strap of her tote. "Want company a little longer?" He didn't answer with words, just lifted the corner of the blanket beside him. Ariel hesitated. Then she walked back and sat down. Not under the blanket, but close. Close enough to feel the warmth of the fire on one side, and his quiet on the other. The room felt suspended. She glanced over and saw his hand resting on the couch between them. Open, unguarded. "You really meant what you said?" she asked. "Which part?" "That I belong in New York. That someone like me could ever make it." Kellen turned his head toward her. "You don't just belong there. You'd walk in and change the air." She smiled, not because it was flattering, but because he sounded like he meant it. "You know," she whispered, "you say things like that and forget you're the one who's dying." His lips parted. For a second, she thought she'd gone too far. But then he whispered back, "Maybe that's why I say them." She looked at him. He looked at her. Neither moved. Neither blinked. Their eyes locked in a silence that stretched like a held breath. The kind of silence that came before something irreversible. Kellen leaned in, slow, careful. Not like a man demanding anything. Like someone asking, without words. Ariel didn't pull away. Their lips met in the softest touch. Not urgent. Not planned. Just truth. His hand rose, cupping her cheek. Fingers cold from the room. Palm warm from intent. She didn't move at first. Then her hands found his shoulders, gripping lightly. Her eyes closed. The kiss deepened, just Slightly enough to carry meaning. Enough to make her heart jump. But then, like a wave folding in on itself, she pulled back. Breathless. Shaken. Alive. I can't, she whispered. Kellen's hand dropped slowly. He didn't argue. He didn't ask why. He just nodded once. Okay. She stood, brushing her skirt with shaking fingers. It's not that I don't feel it, she said, her voice trembling. It's just not like this. Not yet. He looked at her. I understand. But in his eyes, there was something deeper, something unsaid. Not rejection. Not disappointment. Just quiet knowing. I'll wait, he said softly. Ariel stared at him, heart thudding. She wasn't sure which part made her want to cry more, the kiss or his restraint. I know, she whispered. She turned and walked out. But she didn't walk away. Outside, the rain had stopped. She stepped onto the porch, pulled her coat tighter, and tilted her head toward the sky. She had kissed a man who was dying. But in that moment, she'd never felt more alive. The next morning felt different. There was no rain, no heavy air. Just cool sunlight streaming through the high windows of the Ward mansion, casting long rectangles of warmth across the polished floors. Ariel arrived on time, but quieter than usual. She didn't know what to expect. The kiss they didn't finish still sat in her chest like a held secret, but she didn't regret it. She didn't second guess it. She just didn't know where it left them. Margaret met her at the front door with a soft expression. He's already in the study. Asked for you. Ariel blinked. He did. Margaret nodded, then added gently, he didn't sleep much. Ariel smoothed her blouse and stepped toward the study. Kellen was at his desk, hunched over a notebook. Not his medical journal, something new. His fingers moved slowly over the page, as if he were sketching or mapping something out. When she knocked, he didn't look up. Took you long enough. It's 7:59. He smirked but still didn't lift his head. Still late. She stepped closer. What are you working on? He tapped the pen against the page. Don't laugh. She rounded the desk and leaned slightly. The notebook held rough lines of, well, they looked like coats, blazers, some boxy, some sleek, childish at first glance, but not without potential. You're designing? She asked, genuinely surprised. I wouldn't go that far. I'm doodling. They're not bad. He finally looked at her. Liar. No, she said, smiling now. Just someone with better taste than you. He chuckled under his breath. Fair enough. She sat in the chair beside him, pulling out her own sketchbook. Let me fix the neckline on that. 1. He handed the notebook over without hesitation. She redrew the collar, tapered the cut, and handed it back. His eyes scanned the changes. You made it better. She shrugged. That's what I do. Their hands brushed as he took the notebook back. Neither of them pulled away quickly, but neither lingered either. The day went on like that. Soft, steady, close. At lunch, she brought in 2 plates from the kitchen. You're spoiling me, he said as she set the food down. You say that like it's a bad thing. He took a bite, chewed slowly, and nodded. This one's even better than yesterday. She smiled. You're starting to sound like someone who looks forward to meals. Don't get ahead of yourself. She tilted her head. Are you going to pretend that smile wasn't real? He raised an eyebrow. What smile? The one you're fighting now. He pressed his lips together. If you don't stop, I'll add you to my medication list. Side effect. Persistent optimism. They both laughed. Not forced, not polite. Just easy. Later that afternoon, Ariel found herself tidying the bookshelves, humming to a slow R&B tune, playing from her speaker. Kellen didn't interrupt. He just watched her, quietly amused. You always hum when you clean? He asked. It helps me think. About what? She stopped for a moment, running her finger along the spine of a worn medical book. About what life could look like if things were different. He looked at her a long time. I think about that too. She turned. What do you see? You. Her breath caught. He looked down quickly, suddenly unsure. I mean around. You. Moving. Doing things you love. Without all of this. She took a slow step toward him. I think about you too, she said. He met her eyes again. This time, neither of them needed to say more. That night, as Ariel packed up, she didn't feel the usual ache in her chest. The room behind her wasn't heavy anymore. It was lived in, laughed in, loved in just a little. A week passed with lightness they hadn't known before. Kellen smiled more, ate more, let the windows stay open longer. Ariel brought music every morning now. Sometimes he even asked for specific songs, old tracks from artists his father had played in his childhood. Margaret noticed the difference too. Her eyes often lingered on Ariel with quiet gratitude. But even peace in a house like this had an expiration date. It started with silence. That morning Ariel found the study dim. The curtains were still drawn. The tea tray from the night before was untouched. The flowers wilted in the vase. She knocked on the open door. Kellen? No response. He was in the chair, head leaned back, eyes closed. His chest rose and fell, but slower now. Shallower. His face had lost some of the warmth it had gained in recent days. Ariel approached carefully. Hey, she whispered. He blinked, sluggish. Didn't sleep, he mumbled. She touched the back of her hand to his forehead, cooler than usual. I'll get your meds. No, he said quickly, voice raspy. Just sit. She set her tote down and lowered herself into the chair across from him. They sat in quiet, until he spoke again. It's getting worse. Ariel looked at him. You don't know that. I do. She didn't argue. He glanced at the bookshelf. Give me the journal. Her breath caught. Kellen. I need it. She stood slowly and retrieved it, the leather-bound one. The one she had once opened. Without permission. The one he had hidden again and again. She handed it to him. He held it for a while before opening it. His fingers flipped pages with care, pausing here and there. His eyes scanned notes, some medical, some emotional. Ariel couldn't help it. Do you still think about it? His gaze didn't lift. Every day. But things have changed. He finally looked up. That's the problem. They changed. You gave me something I wasn't supposed to feel again. What's that? Hope. She swallowed hard. Isn't that a good thing? Kellen leaned his head back, closing his eyes again. It is. And it hurts. They sat like that, with the journal open and the future closed. Later that day, Ariel found Margaret in the hallway. He's not eating. Barely drinking. Margaret nodded slowly. I know. He won't let me call the specialist. Ariel's voice trembled. What if he's giving up again? Margaret didn't answer right away. Then you'll have to remind him why he stopped the first time. That evening, Kellen was back in the recliner. A blanket draped over him. The journal was still in his lap. Ariel entered quietly, carrying a small cup of soup and a folded sketch. She placed the soup on the side table. He didn't react. Then she unfolded the sketch and laid it on his lap. It was the same dress he liked before, but refined now in ink, with a matching blazer beside. Labeled, detailed, complete. I named it, she said. He looked at her. The one that waited, she added. Thought it deserved a name. Kellen stared at the page. I was going to give up on it, she said softly. On all of it. But then you told me not to. He turned his face away, as if her words hit harder than he could afford to show. You said I could walk into any room and change the air, she continued. Don't take that from me now. He closed the journal gently and set it aside. His hand trembled as it reached for hers. She took it, and for that moment, no matter what the body felt, no matter what the diagnosis whispered, Kellen held on. The night air felt heavier inside the mansion than it did outside. Not because of heat, but because the truth hung in every room like a quiet fog. Ariel found Kellen in the garden. She hadn't expected it. He was rarely strong enough to go outside now without prompting, but there he was, wrapped in a blanket, sitting on the stone bench near the roses. His back was to her. But he knew she was coming. I couldn't breathe in there. She walked over slowly. You should have waited for help. I didn't want help, he said. I wanted air that didn't taste like medicine. She stood beside him. The garden lights glowed softly, casting a low halo over the blooms and stone paths. A gentle wind stirred the leaves, making the world feel smaller and wider at the same time. He looked up at her. You ever think about how unfair it is? To feel more alive right before the end. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she knelt in front of him, folding her legs on the stone pathway. Kellen looked down at her. Say something, he whispered. She took a deep breath. I love you. The words landed with the quiet force of thunder. No ceremony, no trembling, just truth. Kellen blinked. His mouth parted, but no sound followed. I didn't say it to scare you, she continued. And I'm not saying it to make you stay. I'm saying it because it's true. His hands trembled slightly in his lap. You know what loving me means. She nodded. It means pain. It means watching you fade. It means nights I'll cry alone. Days I'll wish I had more time. She leaned forward. But it also means you mattered. That someone saw you. That someone stayed. Kellen's throat moved as he swallowed. You don't deserve this ending. It's not about endings, she said. It's about this moment. Right now. And if I lose you, I lose you. Knowing I gave you everything I had. He lowered his head until their foreheads touched. Barely. His voice cracked. I don't want to leave you. I know, she said softly. And I don't want to lose you. They stayed like that. No kissing, no holding. Just heads bowed together under the soft hum of garden light. Then he lifted her hand, kissed the inside of her wrist, and closed his eyes. If I go, he murmured, you keep building. You wear that dress. You get on that train. She nodded, eyes brimming. And you love again, he said. Ariel shook her head slowly. Not like this. I hope not, he whispered. This only happens once. A tear slipped down her cheek. He reached up with trembling fingers and wiped it gently away. Thank you for being the once. Back inside, Margaret watched from the upper landing. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but as she saw her son rest his head on Ariel's shoulder like a boy lost and found all at once, she wept quietly and smiled through it. That night, Ariel stayed at the mansion. She didn't sleep much. She sat by his bed, held his hand, and somewhere between one breath and the next, she whispered again, I love you, even if I lose you. The house was still when dawn came. Soft gray light slid between the heavy curtains of Kellen's room, touching the edges of his blanket. Ariel sat beside his bed, one hand resting lightly on his. She had stayed through the night, listening to the fragile rhythm of his breathing. When his eyes fluttered open, he smiled faintly. You're still here. Always, she said softly. He shifted a little, grimacing at the movement. I'm sorry about last night. There's nothing to be sorry for. He looked at her, really looked. You should go home. Rest. I'm not leaving you like this. A small huff of air left him. Stubborn woman. She smiled. That's what you liked about me first. He turned his gaze to the window. It's getting close. She squeezed his hand. Don't. I need to say it, he said quietly. Not for me. For you. Her throat tightened. Then say it. He closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them again, they were glassy but clear. When I go, I want you to keep moving. Don't let this house, or me, be the end of your road. She shook her head, tears welling. Don't talk like that. Ariel. His voice was gentle but firm. Promise me. Her lips trembled. What exactly? That you'll get on that train. That you'll wear your designs. That you'll breathe in every room you walk into and fill it. That you'll love again when you're ready. That you won't let this be the last story you live. She bent over, pressing her forehead to his hand. "You're asking me to live while you're dying." "I'm asking you to live because I'm dying," he whispered. Her tears fell onto his skin. "And what about me, who reminds me to breathe when you're gone?" He lifted his other hand, weak but deliberate, cupping the back of her head. "Every stitch every train you take, every design you finish, I'll be there, quiet, but there." She looked up at him, eyes shimmering. "I don't want a ghost. I want you." "I know," he said softly. "And I wish I could stay." She drew a shaky breath. "I promise." He let out a long, slow exhale, not relief, exactly, but peace. "Thank you." They sat in silence, her hand still in his thumb brushing slow circles against her knuckles. Nothing dramatic, just two people holding each other up for as long as the moment allowed. Finally, he spoke again. "One more thing." "What?" "Don't let anyone tell you this was pity. Don't let them reduce it to charity. We loved. That's all it was. That's everything." She pressed her lips together, nodding. "I won't let them." He closed his eyes again, but the corners of his mouth turned up, just slightly. "Good." That evening, Ariel stood at the window of the guest room Margaret had offered her. The house was quiet. Kellen slept. She traced her finger along the glass, writing the word, "promise," in the faint mist of her breath. She had made one, and she intended to keep it. The house was silent. Not the kind of silence that came from peace, the kind that followed a storm. Sunday morning arrived with a sky the color of pale ash. Clouds drifted low, and everything felt still, as if the world itself was waiting. Ariel had slept for barely an hour. She sat in the corner of Kellen's room, curled in the worn chair near his bed, blanket wrapped around her shoulders. The tea Margaret had brought hours ago had gone cold, but Ariel hadn't moved. Kellen's breathing had changed overnight, slower, more distant, like his body was gradually forgetting the rhythm. She watched him now, every rise and fall of his chest like a fragile miracle. Margaret entered quietly, her steps soft, as though afraid to disturb what was already unraveling. Ariel looked up. Neither spoke. Margaret moved to the other side of the bed and gently took Kellen's hand in hers. Her thumb rubbed his wrist, eyes brimming but dry. "He's going," she whispered. Ariel nodded, barely. They sat in silence, the kind that spoke more than words ever could. The minutes passed, and then, without warning, Kellen exhaled. Once, and didn't inhale again. Ariel's breath caught. Margaret closed her eyes, resting her forehead against her son's knuckles. Her shoulders trembled, but she made no sound. Ariel reached out, laid her palm on Kellen's chest, and waited for something. Anything. Stillness. It was done. She stood up, walked slowly to the window, and pulled the curtains wide. Sunlight poured in, soft and golden, spilling across his face. "He didn't want darkness," Ariel whispered. Margaret nodded, her voice breaking. "No, he didn't." The funeral was quiet. Just close family, a few medical colleagues, and Ariel. Margaret had insisted she sit in the front row beside her. "You were there at the end," she had said. "You belong here." No one argued. Kellen was buried in a private plot, beside his father, under a blooming dogwood tree. Ariel wore a navy dress she'd sewn herself. Modest, clean lines, with a sash Kellen once teased her about for being too bold. She wore it anyway. After the final words were spoken, Margaret took her hand. "I need you to come by the house," she said gently. "There's something for you." Later that afternoon, back in the study, Margaret handed Ariel a sealed envelope. "I didn't read it," she said. "He gave it to me the week before. Just asked me to hold on to it. Said you'd know what it meant." Ariel took the envelope with shaking fingers. Her name was written in sharp, steady ink. "No, Miss Jordan. No formality. Just Ariel." She opened it slowly. Inside was a single letter, no preamble, no fluff. Just him. "Ariel, you gave me something I thought I'd lost, joy. You reminded me that even when the body fails, the heart can still love. I can't stay, but I don't want you trapped like I was. So I've left you what I can, the house in Savannah and enough to launch your line. Margaret has all the paperwork. She agreed without hesitation. She says she's proud of you. So am I. Go live boldly. Live for us both. Always, Kellen. Ariel clutched the letter to her chest. Eyes closed, breath shuddering. But what she felt wasn't grief alone. It was something deeper. A calling. Margaret waited as Ariel read the letter, her hands folded gently in front of her. The study was quiet except for the faint tick of the grandfather clock. Sunlight shifted across the carpet, catching the edge of the envelope. When Ariel finally lowered the paper, her eyes were damp but steady. He left me a house? Margaret nodded. In Savannah. It was his father's retreat. He always said it felt freer than this. 1. He wanted you to have a place that didn't remind you of sickness. Ariel's fingers tightened on the letter. And money for my designs? Margaret smiled softly. Enough to give you a start. He made me promise not to let you find out. Until now. He wanted you to stay with him because you wanted to, not because you felt you owed him. Ariel blinked rapidly, swallowing hard. He always thought like that. Margaret reached out and covered Ariel's hands with her own. He loved you. I've never seen him come alive the way he did with you. And he wanted you to have this. Ariel stared down at the envelope. I don't know how to. You don't have to know right now, Margaret said. Just accept it. And use it. That's what he wanted. They drove to Savannah 2 weeks later. Margaret insisted on coming along for the handover, though she said little during the trip. Ariel sat in the passenger seat, sketchbook balanced on her knees, drawing lines she couldn't quite finish. The estate came into view at the end of a winding dirt road, framed by tall oaks draped with moss. But unlike the Buckhead mansion, this house was lighter, 2 stories of soft cream, wood, wide porches, blue shutters, and a breeze rolling in from the nearby river. It wasn't grand. It was alive. Ariel stepped out of the car and inhaled deeply. The air smelled of salt and jasmine. She could almost hear Kellen's voice. Live boldly. Live for us both. Margaret handed her the keys. It's yours. Ariel turned the key in her hand, feeling its weight. I don't deserve this. Margaret shook her head. Deserve has nothing to do with it. He chose. He wanted you free. They walked through the house together. Sunlight streamed into every room. Wooden floors creaked underfoot. The kitchen was modest but bright. Upstairs, the bedrooms looked out over the river. There was even a small workroom with a long table and windows on 3 sides, perfect for sewing, sketching, or simply breathing. Ariel ran her fingers over the window frame. He thought of everything. Margaret's voice softened. He thought of you. That evening, after Margaret left, Ariel sat on the porch alone. The sky over the river was painted in oranges and pinks. She unfolded Kellen's letter again, reading the lines slowly, letting them sink into her bones. She imagined him sitting beside her, smirking at her hesitation, urging her on. She whispered into the breeze, I'm here. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother and brother. We're so proud of you. Send pictures. Ariel snapped one of the porch, the river beyond, her sketchbook on her lap. She sent it back, with a single caption. The beginning. Then she opened a fresh page and began sketching again. This time not a dress, but a collection. Bold, fearless, full of movement. For the first time, she didn't draw for escape. She drew for arrival. Atlanta's train station pulsed with the quiet energy of departures. Soft announcements echoed. Overhead, rolling bags clicked against concrete. People hugged, waved, boarded, all of them, carrying something unseen. Ariel stood in the middle of it all, calm in the chaos. She wore a long, flowing dress made of patchwork silk and crisp linen, stitched from the very scraps she once thought worthless. Each panel told a story. The the pale yellow from her mama's old apron, the deep burgundy from a thrifted coat Kellen once teased her about, the sky blue, stitched from fabric he had given her, just because she said she liked the texture. It wasn't just a dress. It was her life. Past, present, and everything ahead, sewn into fabric. She held her sketchbook in one hand and her train ticket in the other. Her tote, the same one she'd carried into the Ward mansion, was now filled with design samples, a business plan Margaret helped her finalize, and the folded letter that never left her side. Her mother stood behind her, holding Caleb's hand. "You sure about this?" her mother asked gently. Ariel turned, eyes bright. "No, but I'm ready." Her mother hugged her tight. Kellen would be so proud. Ariel smiled, and for once, it didn't ache to hear his name. "He is." Caleb stepped forward. "Can I come next time?" "You better," Ariel said, crouching to kiss his cheek. The final boarding call rang out. She stood, adjusted her bag, and walked toward the platform. As she climbed the steps into the train, her heart beat steady. Not because she wasn't afraid, but because she was going anyway. She found her seat by the window and sat, placing her sketchbook on her lap. The train lurched forward. Outside, the city rolled past. Buildings, streets, people she used to dream about escaping. But today she wasn't running. She was claiming. She opened the sketchbook, turned to the first page, and scribbled 2 words in the margin. Beside her latest design, 4K. Then she leaned her head against the window, closed her eyes, and whispered, "I kept my promise." Back in Savannah, the house sat quiet but not empty. A breeze moved the curtains. In the workroom, on the long table by the windows, Ariel's first finished collection lay waiting, bright colors, bold lines, unapologetic shapes, just like her. Well, family, thank you for staying till the end. If this story touched something in your heart, please like, comment, and tell us where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe to Mr. Hearthline Stories for more emotional journeys, life lessons, and beautiful endings just like this one.